Assalamu alaikum and good day to all of you. I'm extremely delighted to be here today, and it's a real pleasure to be presenting on this platform along with the global experts, renowned educationists, and these enthusiastic learners, and that too on such a contemporary topic as how AI/ML is transforming the telecom industry. I would like to set the tone of what I'm going to talk about with the notion that we are experiencing what is called the smart world revolution. The world is generating more than 2.5 quintillion bytes of data every day. And if we use our imagination, what will happen when 5G and the scale of IoT comes into full action? This number is definitely going to go up by I don't know, maybe 20 to 30% by just next year. Given the span of AI, the way we are using it in the world, we can talk, some other that how different industries are adopting AI, what problems they are solving with it, what challenges they're facing. But today, let's concentrate on how the telecom industry is using it. But one thing is for sure, every industry is trying their best to democratize AI, decentralize AI, to reap the best results from the AI revolution that we're experiencing. Now, how many times we hear these days that the telecom industry is going through digital transformation? I'm sure you will say a lot of times. But trust me, this is not the first time this industry is experiencing digital makeover. We saw it when 2G to 3G shift took place, when streaming and video on demand services started to take things over. But it's probably true, it has never been so rapid and disruptive as it is now. I clearly see that the idea of build to adapt is sort of taking over the famous concept of build to last. Now, build to last is a great concept, I'm not against it. But for my today's context of how AI/ML is transforming the telecom industry, I'll talk about how telcos, or as we love to call them, like mobile network operators or MNOs, are using AI to adapt to the constantly evolving business needs, leaner cost structures, diversified skills, which are deemed essential to remain profitable in today's cutthroat industry. I'll also try to touch on how mobile operators are gradually building an AI-first culture inside their organization when they kind of deal with a new problem that needs completely out-of-the-box thinking to come up with a resolution. Now, I'm sure the audience here today is absolutely updated on how the industry is valuing the contribution of AI in terms of making an impact on a broader level. Intangible or tangible it may be, but some of the stats available are extremely encouraging. By 2021, 85% of customer interactions across all industries will end up using some sort of AI. By 2025, AI will generate around $7 trillion worth of business, and robotics itself, which heavily uses AI components, will generate around $4 trillion just, and by the same period. Now, the world loves to spend money on AI. And if you're wondering how much is that, the global spend on AI is hovering around, the 50 billion mark in 2020 itself. And it's increasing every passing year. Now, coming back to telecom, and zooming in the mobile network industry, there have always been talks if we could use AI and change the fate of some of the issues in hand. These issues are quite different in nature, things like improving customer experience and satisfaction levels, finding new revenue streams, reducing capital investments or operating expenses. And if I put in simple terms, MNOs have always struggled to deal with these problems, almost since the inception for many of them. Now, let me outline, first, there are some do's and don'ts, about practicing AI in MNOs. It's not carved in stone, but, please mind it, but it's the usual way of, handling things. Like number one, MNOs don't always start the discussion shouting the word AI. They wouldn't say, hey, there's a thing called AI, let's use it, get some quick returns. No, they start the discussion by attempting to solve a problem, which is business, a problem in nature, and with the mindset of finding a completely new way of handling it. An example could be, like an MNO may want to know if there's a way to detect a network for or system fault in its network and send a signal to its back office, a team about it in real time, of course, and get an indication what has gone wrong in the network, how long it will take to solve. And MNO may even want to know if there's a way to automatically solve the problem by the network itself without an engineer, going through the long list of records of error transcripts. Now that's a business problem to solve. And up until this point, we haven't talked about AI. Now, some MNOs will try to use probably a fixed rule engine, the typical if then else kind of solution to solve it. Some will increase manpower at the back office. Some will try to improve the existing process to handle the issue better. They would probably digitize the entire workflow to handle things better. Now, no doubt that all this will add up to the incremental value. But few MNOs will try to attempt the business problem by looking at its historical data, find certain patterns of system faults, then use the right algorithm to build an ML model that can fairly correctly identify a network or system fault. They would build the model in a way that it can handle new data coming in and extract a set of learning from it, to trigger a new call to action with no or minimal manual intervention. You have probably noticed that I have explained it just now in an oversimplified manner, just for your understanding, but the actual process that MNOs follow is a little more complex. But the major steps are pretty much what I have just talked about. This is the standard operating procedure, if we call it, being followed to attempt to solve a problem in hand using AI at the MNOs. Now, this is the use of the supervised learning that I have just talked about is just the way an MNO would deploy an AI-based solution and probably would run iterations after iterations to perfect the model in small scale first, of course, and then go large scale deployment. Number two, MNOs don't try to solve their strategic problems using AI. Stuff like how can we improve the top line, how to optimize spans, maybe how to improve employee engagement. These things are better left to human experts to deal with. AI can of course play a supporting role, but strategic decisions are mostly left to the humans. Rather, AI is used in solving practical problems, like the fault detection example I just talked about, remediation, image processing, speech processing, biometric data processing, moving object recognition at the sites and trigger certain actions based on that. Now, all of these are great example of narrowband, knowledge-intensive, computing-hungry decision-making areas for artificial intelligence in MNOs. Number three, MNOs who succeed in dealing with AI often demonstrate patience. They take time. They do take a note that a machine learning model will get perfected over a period of time. It needs to get exposed to different testing conditions and to more and more data. Now, MNOs allow that learning period, which is in most cases, it's not really too long if the problem statement is very specific and can be narrowed down. Now, number four, MNOs would always use an additional hand, or leg, to execute or fulfill the application of AI. This works exactly the way our human brain, triggers actions, when we use our other senses to fulfill. For AI, for example, a robotics process automation, or an RPA agent, a natural language processing or NLP bot, a digitized workflow, a smart motion camera or face detector, a telecom communication channel like a mobile app will actually execute a decision at the customer level. Number five, there's typically an AI champion in each relevant function in an MNO, who would sort of be the flag bearer and could see a problem from both business as well as technical sides. This team of champions would meet up and set forward the strategies for an MNO in order to become AI enabled. it's usually a pattern, that the MNOs follow. They would pretty much empower this team with a clear management mandate, and this team would always find a way to get their support from the top management. In short, MNOs would drive AI strategy top down, but successful AI projects are always driven bottom up. I guess we jump into the use case part now. I hope I'm not getting too fast or too slow here. Am I? No, okay, right. So for AI use cases in MNOs, I'll only talk about the most likely top 5 business and revenue generating use cases first. Number 1, personalizing offer management. A next best offer. An AI engine can tell us, based on a customer's past purchase behavior or patterns, what is his or her most likely next purchase, propensity from his, from his operator, or the connection that he's using, it's going to be. So that's that's a potentially probable buying behavior that a user would have, whenever he's going to attempt his new purchase. The second is, the superior self-service systems. MNOs are building systems that can compare the entire life cycle of a product, or self-service offering by itself. Like it can register you as a user. It can give you an ID. It can check your credentials. It can help you with serving your complaints or service requests all by itself without any manual intervention. The third one would be the real-time network experience management. MNOs are gradually implementing AI models to offer you the best network experience within the resource limitations they have on ground. This model would exactly know how many users are using internet, how much they each are consuming, the bandwidth, and based on their needs, the model can try out different QoS or quality of services for each customers with different set of values. The fourth use case, deals with the monetization of data analytics. MNOs, we just talked about a little while ago, MNOs generate petabytes of data every day. And much of this data, unfortunately, is still unexplored. But some of the MNOs have started digging this data with the help of their data engineers and data science team, and are able to create insights lucrative enough for the other corporations to pay for that. I can give you some examples, like credit profiling, purchase patterns, major concentration or gathering of people for a festival or a celebration purpose. These all data actually have monetary value to somebody in the world who are dying to get those insights. The last one would be, deploying smart chatbots or voice bots. You know about Alexa or Siri, I'm pretty sure, but many MNOs use similar AI-based bots to interact with their customers and guide the discussion much more accurately in the right direction than, of course, humans. And a pinch of salt here is that use of proper English or proper Bangla is needed, because these bots are still in a learning phase. A proper NLP, a diversified NLP, is still work in progress, but there are enough effort being put into this area, and things are getting better and better as we move forward. Now, though these were revenue generating or experience enhancing use cases, MNOs are also using AI for cost and efficiency management. Now, let's talk about some of the use cases here. Number 1, driving zero ops. Self-correction, elastic capacity management, all by the system itself. Then temporarily, trying to see if capacity can be allocated to some of the areas when there is a burst traffic. And improving productivity through assisted AI is another area, like AI SOC, where MNO Service Operations Center is run completely by the AI agents. Then again, there is rectifying network faults. This is mainly on the edge, correcting a fault or tuning a parameter without having to go through the central operation cycle. Then offloading hotline calls to AI agents, like smart IVR. This allows MNOs to put their skilled resources into more cognitive hungry roles, more roles where, you can put your brains into action. And finally, the task of monitoring and remediating cyber attacks through AI-based cyber resilience is another thing that's picking up quite well. This is still in progress, this is progressing uh, step by step, but MNOs are trying to improve on this area every day. Are there any special mantras that MNOs would keep in mind when dealing with artificial intelligence? Well, there are a few, like number one, like MNOs focus on upskilling employees' knowledge. They would try to increase their employees' knowledge based on artificial intelligence, and they even don't shy away, from putting them into systematic programs and on-the-job training all the time. They would typically first try to get the low-hanging fruits, low-hanging AI projects done. And this builds confidence, and the learning is cheap if you even fail. They always prepare to accept failures, and move on. And just their AI investments are always justified by looking at the future of their operating models, not necessarily by immediate results. Now, would you like me to give you a hint of, like the technologies that MNOs would use in the AI ecosystem? Probably the answer would be yes. Let's see if I can give you some hints on that. Let me start with the big data layer first. Typically, mobile network operators, they would use a technology like Cloudera, Mapper, Hortonworks, and this is to build a strong foundation of data lake. In our country, our sensitive data needs to reside within the country's border, and that's by law. So we always rely on what we call on-premise big data infrastructure. But there are MNOs in the world where this is not a binding, and they would probably also use Google BigQuery, Qvol, Snowflake to build their data lake. Now, for building an ML models, MNOs typically use a TensorFlow, Google Cloud ML, the Watson, the Dialogflow, the whole Apache stack to help them build the ML, deep learning, or neural network-based models. Keras is growing in popularity in MNOs, as it allows you to use the APIs and make the developer's life a lot easier and business life a lot simpler. MNOs also use GPUs and TPUs, for models that need extremely heavy edge processing powers. For example, image processing to perfection. There are some important aspects that MNOs keep in mind, when dealing with AI ecosystem, like data security. I already told you that MNOs deal with petabytes of data on a daily basis. It is of utmost importance to ensure the data is processed and stored in a very secure environment. Data quality. There's a saying goes like, garbage in is garbage out. So it's important to ensure a single version of truth and is maintained, and a solid master data management is in practice. AI ethics. Now, AI ethics is becoming a growing concern for MNOs. If you have bias and apply the same when you are developing an algorithm, it can kill your AI project. So MNOs always monitor and check the outcome of an AI decision to ensure that the moral compass is not violated. A few final words. I think many will agree with me that it's no more an option for MNOs to be AI equipped. It's rather an obligation. It's a must do, especially in the era of people where people they love contactless zero touch services. Use of AI could be the only way to ensure the customer satisfaction of the future. MNOs are learning over the years to fail fast, learn fast, and get results fast as well when they're trying out new AI-based applications and solutions. The results have started to show as well, in terms of, let's take increased efficiency, enhanced productivity, reduced margin of errors, improved customer experience, lowered cost of operation, diversified revenue streams, and more importantly, and most importantly rather, a future-ready workforce. Now, the journey is still in its early days, but MNOs are not trying to do everything by themselves. They're getting into strong partnerships, tie-ups with the industry innovators of AI and trying to create a win-win situation for all. MNOs are excited with the prospects of AI, but we don't see it anytime soon that human abilities will be put into any sort of existence challenge, by the use of artificial intelligence. Rather, the rise of AI will mean more extensive use of our own neural network that we call brain, and AI is absolutely no match for it yet. So that would be my last words. Thank you very much for listening, and it was a pleasure talking to all of you and meeting you here on this digital platform. Stay safe. Allah Hafiz.